Last week, the Heel Tough Blog podcast sat down to talk to Athlon Sports contributor and college football insider Steven Lassan about the Tar Heels this upcoming season.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, first of all, for coming and talking to us on the podcast here. I mean, you guys really, you got something great going on there at Athlon Sports. I think a lot of people, we know, about, Phil Steele, but I think when it comes to, college football preview magazines, you guys are just on a different level. It's got to be a year-round thing for you guys, and also doing the podcast that you guys do. So, really just talk about, first of all, why college football is important to you and why you feel that it's important to get that information out to the fans.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I appreciate you having me on to talk. It's always great to talk a little ACC football and the upcoming season. I think for us, our preseason magazine is probably our most favorite thing to do. It's what Athlon was founded upon. It started out as an SEC magazine, and it's transitioned to doing magazines for all 5 Power 5 conferences, plus the national edition as well, which has a preview for all 130 teams. So, we've always been ingrained in the preseason magazine, and our thought is, we try to give fans as much information as possible in the preseason magazine, whether that is the features, our kind of list at the front of the magazine, and our predictions and previews for the start of the season. And that translates to online, too. We do a lot of things online that piggyback the magazine, help promote the magazine, and just some supplemental stuff. Our coach rankings and our 130 quarterback rankings, we can expand on it online compared to what we can do in the magazine. But, I started at Athlon about 13 years ago, and, I think the most enjoyment I get out of this is putting together the magazine every year. It starts, believe it or not, it actually starts in November at the end of the season. So once we know teams are not going to be in bowl games, we go ahead and start working on statistics and some of the other background information that go in the magazine, sort of the R&D portion of the magazine. And then once we get past the NFL draft deadline, that's when we start to pick out our cover subjects, and we start working on some of the other pieces that go along with our covers and things like that. Once you get past signing day and into spring practice is really when we start to ramp up. We start to look at, predictions, and we start to have staff meetings, and we debate our conference predictions, national predictions, and all that. So, I think, like I said, it's my favorite thing to do. I think, from a, prediction and analysis standpoint, I really enjoy the fact that we put together an in-depth magazine with all 130 teams, the conference magazines too. I think it's the perfect companion to get ready for the season. I was a fan of Athlon before I started working there, so it's really just the perfect marriage of information and insight, and I think in-depth analysis to get you ready for the season, whether it's the magazine or the website.
I can't speak for everyone that listens to this podcast, but I know personally that's probably my favorite out there because I think it gives you just enough information. But, sometimes when you look at some of these other guides out there, it can be a little overwhelming. I think Athlon does such a great job of just balancing that out. So, I love what you guys are doing over there. Focusing a little and starting to look at the Tar Heels here, we come off a season where we were 3-9. I think this team was probably better than that 3-9 record is going to speak to, but all of the injuries that took place, having to play inexperienced players probably snowballed a little bit. What do you think right now is the direction of this program as we sit here today?
I think it's an important season for Larry Fedora at North Carolina. You look around the Coastal, Miami hired Mark Richt. That looks like a home run hire. Virginia Tech really nailed the Justin Fuente hire. So I think for North Carolina, the fact that they've gone from 11 wins to 8 wins to 3 wins, I think it's important for this program to show things are going back in the right direction. And I agree with you. I think this team is better than its record indicated last season. I think you look up and down the depth chart from the preseason and look to November and see how many injuries this team had, whether it was on the offensive line, at receiver, or on defense too. I think there is a good foundation in place. I think you can look at North Carolina and see the bad luck with injuries, the turnover margin. They played some close games. 4 losses by 10 points or less. A few bounces go the other way for North Carolina. We're talking that this team may have been 5-7 in a rebuilding year where they lost Mitchell Trubisky and was going through a quarterback cycle there. So I think this team was better than 3-9 suggested last year, but it is a big season. And you start to look at some of these pieces, I think there's a lot to like about North Carolina. I like Anthony Ratliff-Williams, just so explosive with the ball in his hand. Good core of running backs, and I think defensively, I like Malik Carney too. It's easy to lose him in the depth of the ACC defensive lineman, but I think he's a nice player. Cole Holcomb is back at linebacker too, so I think there's enough of a foundation where North Carolina can take a step forward. I think one thing that gives me a little bit of pause is their schedule. The fact that they play some swing games on the road, California, not to mention Syracuse, Virginia, Duke too. I mean, some swing games on the road, it's going to be tough, but I think this team will be better next season.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about it, and really, I think it starts at quarterback. They've got to find someone that can kind of take over that role. Maybe not to the extent that Mitch Trubisky was playing at it, but, I looked in the preview that you guys had. You guys have Chad Surratt starting. Is there any specific reason why you think he's going to start over Nathan Elliott, and how important do you think it is that they settle on a guy early in the year?
I think it's critical that they settle on a quarterback. I think when you start to look at this team and you look at those defensive stats from last season, and if North Carolina gives up 30 points a game again, they're going to need their offense to carry this team. And I think just having that stability under center is huge. I think that when you watch this team at the end of the last season and you look at what Chad Surratt did in the first half, I think both quarterbacks have showed they are capable of leading this offense. So I think if you're North Carolina, you have to feel pretty good. You have 2 proven options and 2 guys you can probably win with this season. I think in terms of why Surratt over Elliott, I just think it's the upside factor. I think he has more overall talent. I think he's probably a little bit better fit for the offense. So I think that's why we went with him over Elliott. And, I think if you're Larry Fedora, you'd like to see one guy kind of seize that position and take hold as the clear number 1 quarterback for, an offense that, still averaged, 26 points a game last season and should be even better this year with some of the skill talent that's in place.
From a national standpoint, I feel like one of the biggest question marks on the team has to be the offensive line. For us guys that are a little more in tune to the team, it seems like there are some pieces there. But, taking it back to the national standpoint, why are you guys so concerned about that offensive line, and how do you think they are able to solve that if they are?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think from a personnel standpoint, I think North Carolina has to feel pretty good about its tackle. I think Charlie Heck and William Sweet, I think you have to feel pretty good about your bookends on each side. I think the question marks just come in the middle. There's clearly transition there. Those guys were pretty good recruits coming out of high school. So I think there is some reasons to be optimistic. If you had to pick, you would rather have good tackles in place to protect your quarterback. And I always think your interior of your line is a little bit easier to reload. So I think it's just the inexperience, relative to what North Carolina has the tackle position, the turnover there on the interior, just the uncertainty going into the season. I will say one thing that's interesting about the ACC and its offensive line. I think there's some pretty good offensive lines in this league. Boston College, Clemson, NC State. Even teams like Louisville could take a step forward this season. I think in terms of where this line ranks in the conference, I would probably rate it closer to, the back half of the league, 7 to 10, somewhere in there. But, certainly there is potential, and I think it all depends on how fast and how easy that transition is to the next wave of starters on the interior.
I looked at the rankings, and you guys do the position rankings, which is something that I really like that you guys do for conference by conference. And something that I saw in specific for the defense, no unit ranked higher than 9th in the ACC, which to a point I do agree with. I think the linebacking core has a lot of question marks. The defensive line ranked at 9th. Was something that, I kind of just said, well, look at the other defensive lines that we have in the conference. The one area that I thought we would be a little bit higher, and, I'm not, criticizing you guys in any way. That's your opinion. What do you think? Why do you think that the defensive back unit is ranked as low as you guys have them?
Yeah, great question. I can tell you, I play a pretty big role in helping put those together every year. And I think one thing that I've noticed a lot of times, you get past 5 or 6 in a conference, there's really not a ton of difference between 6 and 13 and 6 and 12 sometimes. It's really about, who do you like just a little bit more? So, I think probably maybe a better way to do this is when you think about a range of unit rankings for defensive backs, you probably would assign them a grade of or a number, like 65 or whatever it is. There's really not much separation. So I think on the, we have them rated number 12. That might be a little low. I mean, with 3 starters coming back, obviously losing Stewart is huge, but there's a lot to like about that secondary. I think you look at Doran and Sales and Britt, those guys coming back as returning starters. It wouldn't shock me to see that we have North Carolina too low at that position. So I won't disagree with you. I think it's probably more of a product of everyone's really close, and someone has to be 7, someone has to be 12. I know that's probably not the most satisfying answer in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay, man. I totally understand, and I feel you on that. Once, especially in those Power 5 conferences, when you get to that middle area of the conference, it is so hard to kind of differentiate between the units. One unit that you guys don't have ranked on there, but I'm interested to see what you think of it. The Tar Heels have always had a strong special teams unit under Larry Fedora, and again, it feels like they're going to have a good unit this year. You guys don't rank those units, but if you had to just look at that unit and think, where would they stack up? Where do you think this team would stack up in the ACC and maybe even nationally?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked about that because we don't get a ton of questions about special teams, and I think it is such an important part because it could steal you a game or two during the season. I think the first thing that stands out about North Carolina's special teams is just how good Anthony Ratliff-Williams is on return. He was, one of our top return men for this season. He's one of our top, 35 receivers or so. So I think automatically North Carolina has one of the top playmakers on special teams in college football. The kicking and punting, I don't think Freeman Jones or Hunter Lent made our all-conference team this season. In kind of an odd just twist, the ACC is especially deep at punter this year. It's not as deep at kicker, but it's deep at punter. So we had 8 or 9 punters, I think, and maybe even more than that we were considering for all conference honors. So, where does it rank in the ACC? I would probably put it in the top half just simply because if you have a difference maker on special teams and a guy that could score 2 or 3 times during the season, I think that's worth a couple points. I think that's just so valuable, especially for a program like North Carolina that enters the year with some question marks on both sides. If you've got a guy who can score on special teams, I think that's worth it a lot, especially in a division where North Carolina could be just a little bit better and get to 6-6.
Yeah, so, now, we kind of previewed the positions groups and everything like that. If you have to look at this team, what do you think is the ceiling for this team this year? A realistic ceiling that these fans can say, okay, that's where we can reach if we have, we overachieve a little bit?
I think North Carolina in a reasonable, kind of expectation. I think 6 or 7 wins would be a big step forward, and seems about right for me. I mean, we talked about their schedule. I think the non-conference schedule is interesting because they have to go to California and they have to play UCF. And those are going to be 2 swing games. If they can pick up both of those as victories, all of a sudden you just need a couple wins in ACC play to get bowl eligible. And Virginia, Syracuse, Duke, I'll even throw NC State in there, Pittsburgh. Those are all winnable conference games. So I think there is a path to 6-6 or 7-5. I think the personnel question marks are clear. North Carolina needs a quarterback to emerge. It needs to be better on defense. But with all the youth and injuries and how many players were used last season, I think that works to their advantage. So I'll say if North Carolina goes from 3 wins to 5 wins and is more competitive in ACC play, I'll buy that as a good season. I think if they go from 3 to 6 or 7, that's a great season. So, I kind of over-under, to me, I think 6 wins is probably 6 or 7 seems like the ceiling for this team. When you look at the Coastal, Miami, Virginia Tech are, I think, a clear 1 and 2. But after that, we have Georgia Tech and Pittsburgh at 3 and 4. I'm not totally sold on either team. I have question marks about both. So, I think, 4th or 5th in the Coastal and getting to 6 or 7 wins, I think that sounds like a pretty reasonable ceiling for this team as it looks to get back on track.
Yeah, I mean, I would not argue with that at all. The last thing that I wanted to ask you, the magazine has us finishing at 4-8 and 2-6 in conference. If that ends up panning out like that, do you think that it is time to move on from Larry Fedora and start to look for a new coach and try to take this program in a new direction?
I'm glad you asked about that. What's funny is we do our rankings and we debate by just predictions. So we'll go 1 through 7 and we'll debate as a staff, and then we'll come back and we'll do our game-by-game predictions and we'll see if they line up. Well, North Carolina at 4-8 was not our most popular pick. I don't think any of us felt great about it. I think most of the staff felt North Carolina would be closer to 5 wins. So I think we're a little low on the win total. I think we might be a little low on where we have them nationally. So I think if I had to pick, I would guess North Carolina finishes with more than 4 wins. But that being said, I think it's too early to put Larry Fedora on the hot seat. I think it's fair to say that, are things getting a little warm if North Carolina doesn't go to a bowl game? Sure. But I think maybe a little context of how the season plays out is important. I think, is North Carolina more competitive in conference play? If they are, with a bunch of juniors and sophomores that are playing, realistically, I think you look at 2019 as kind of the make-or-break season. So I think North Carolina being only 2 years removed from winning the Coastal, I think it's really hard for me to put Larry Fedora on the hot seat right now. If they go 3-9 again, yeah, I think so. But I think this team will be better, and I think the temperature gauge just goes up a degree or 2, and Larry Fedora is back for 2019.
All right. Well, guys, that is Steven Lassan that has sat down to talk to us from Athlon Sports. Want to thank him for taking some time. Hey, this was great, man. I love getting these opinions out there. And, from a guy like you and from a group that does such a great job over at Athlon Sports, I want to thank you guys personally. And, keep doing what you're doing.
Hey, Anthony, I really appreciate that. Thanks for having me on, and hopefully we can do it again.
All right. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. You have a great week, okay?
You too. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. All right. So, guys, Steven Lassan of Athlon Sports stopping by to talk with us about what he sees from the Tar Heels this upcoming season. We're going to continue to try to get these opinions from these national guys on here if possible. But as we head closer and closer towards the season, closer and closer mostly towards fall camp opening, we will be starting to delve into some of the Carolina focus. So hoping to have Pat James back on as we get a little bit closer, giving him a little time off after he went through, the basketball team run. Then he had to cover the baseball team with their run through to Omaha in the College World Series. So we will definitely hope to have him back on sometime down the line. We'll have some more of these national guys down the line, maybe coming back on at near mid-season to talk about that. One of the other big things that I'm looking into doing down the line is to have a sort of a fan-involved prediction episode where we will do it through a different website. We're going to do it through blogtalkradio.com. I'll set that up for you guys and give you a little more information, and I'm hoping that's something that you guys will really get behind, where you get to call up and tell me. We've heard all these national guys with their predictions. We'll hear some of the Tar Heel, the more Tar Heel focused guys come on and tell us some of their predictions. But I really want to hear from you guys and what you think about this team coming up this season, and we'll do that here actually kind of soon is when I'm hoping to get that up. Some big-time stuff coming on the blog. Got all of the position previews already finished right now. I'm going to try to wait a little bit, though, and find out some of the jersey numbers for the guys that will join in the fall. Also try to find out some of the walk-ons that we will be seeing coming in this year. But I may end up rolling with that if I can't find those within the next couple of weeks. Try to roll those out a little bit earlier than I did last year when I did it in August, and then we'll get ready for fall camp, which will begin soon. We know for sure now that it was actually just announced a little while ago that Meet the Heels will be on August 4th, so prepare for that, guys. They're going to do it inside the stadium this year. They're going to do it in the Blue Zone, so that is humongous that they're bringing that back inside the stadium. It hasn't been there since, I think it was, 3 or 4 years ago when they did it inside the Keenan Football Center. So that's some exciting news. Guys, football season is right around the corner. As always, if you want to follow me, go on to Twitter at Future Tar Heel. Facebook also has me, Anthony Pagnotta. You guys can follow there. Blog website is in my Twitter bio. Also, you could just go to medium.com, search Heel Tough Blog. You can find it there. Podcast is on Spreaker, Apple Podcast, Google Play, TuneIn. We got it everywhere. We're trying to get it to as many spots as we possibly can to get it out to you guys. And, I want to thank you guys for listening and for keeping, the blog alive, keeping the podcast alive. And, if you love it, just, keep sending me, the whatever you guys have that could be improvements. And, guys, I want to hear your opinions. Are you excited about possibly doing this podcast where we talk about your predictions, where you guys come in and sit down and tell me what you think is going to happen? If you guys are excited, let me know at Future Tar Heel on Twitter. So, guys, that's going to be it for today's episode. One more time, I want to thank Steven Lassan from Athlon Sports for stopping by. But for now, we get ready to say goodbye from the Heel Tough Blog podcast. And as always, go Tar Heels.